Oh, hello there. I didn't see you there. I'm going to tell you guys something I told my patrons on the Adventist History Extra podcast. Someone listened to that and said, Matthew, you got to make this part public. So here I am in public. Now, this isn't going to be the whole Adventist History Extra episode. You can still go listen to that by signing up on the website, AdventistHistoryPodcast.org, or by becoming a patron on patreon.com/AdventistHistoryPodcast. So it's not the whole episode, but it's a part of it where I explain why we need to talk more about women in Adventist history. Now, we just had a huge conference about women in Adventist history. It was October 2023. Whew! I can remember things that happened just 2 months ago. Yes.
Oops.
Anyways, I mentioned on the extra episode that when I redo all of season 1 of the Adventist History podcast, I'm going to be more intentional about telling the stories of Adventist women.
Okay. Ladies first.
But I realized that there are people out there who don't get why we should be focusing on Adventist women. It feels too trendy to them.
It became trendy, I suppose.
Feels like we're trying to impose our modern emphases on women and women's stories onto Adventist history to earn some points with the world.
There are no points for effort.
These people aren't against women per se. They just don't want to see their history re-engineered or revised to make it more politically correct or something like that. Now, of course, these people wouldn't post these opinions on social media because they're going to get destroyed because social media is a toxic wasteland. It's not worth it. Now, I know that these people are out there because I used to be one of them.
Oh, yeah. Plot twist.
What?
So let me just take a minute and address the people out there who think we should just do history and not bother focusing on women, on non-Americans, on whoever is considered the endangered species of the week. Why does it matter that we tell women's stories in how we do history, and specifically Adventist history? First, let's just get some things straight here. We know for certain that women's stories were de-emphasized during the fundamentalist era of Adventism. Kevin Burton wrote a fantastic piece about this at Spectrum. It was called God's Last Choice, where he's quoting Ottilie Stafford here. Something happened to women in the Seventh-Day Adventist Church beginning in 1915 and sharply accelerating in the mid-1940s that led to the almost total exclusion of women from leadership positions in the church. In the 1870s, 2 of the 3 officers of the Michigan Conference were female. 2 of the 3. That's never happened since. So what we have to get straight is that the Adventist history many of us grew up with was written to exclude women. I never heard about women pastors growing up. I never heard about a women conference president growing up. So for people who are worried about revisionist Adventist history, surprise! The history almost all of us grew up with was already revisionist. What I and other Adventist historians are trying to do is not impose an agenda, but to remove an agenda. Second, this adds up to 4, whatever. Even if we were doing revisionist history, we shouldn't be afraid of revising history because we're all biased, because we all read history with our particular moment in mind, bringing to bear our own values and interpretations. So I wouldn't pretend that what I do is somehow value-neutral history or unbiased history. It's not. We see how previous generations did history that minimize the contributions of women, and we want to correct that. But we're not neutral in how we do history, and I should hope that later generations will correct any bias I might have if it gets in the way of this Adventist story. The goal isn't some kind of perfectly objective history, but to be honest about our own subjectivity, try to account for it when we do history. If we're revising history or re-revising history, we must be careful not to inflate minor characters into major characters. Totally agree. Or pretend that certain women have more influence just because we want to tell a good story and make women look good. The goal is still to remain true to the facts, but to tell more of the facts than have been told in the past. Third, yes, there is a sense of justice in including women, given that women have often been neglected and ignored in Adventist history. How could it be otherwise? We need to get this story back in the story stream we call history. Telling the stories of men and women in Adventist history, from the General Conference president down to local church members, is a matter of honoring them for what they said, did, and believed. That doesn't mean we always agree with them, but they're a part of Adventist history, whether we like it or not, and we owe it to them to include them if we notice that others are excluding them. Fourth, our goal with the Adventist History Project is to give everyone a working knowledge of Adventist history, a history they can use to work out their own Adventist identity and learn how to think and act Adventistly in the 21st century. This means that the stories I tell must represent as many Adventists today as possible. Men should be able to draw inspiration from stories about men, women from women, non-Americans from non-Americans, and so on. This isn't an issue of being politically correct, but in offering history that is more accurate, interesting, and useful to the diverse group of people who are Seventh-day Adventists. When we look in Adventist history, I want to see people who are different from me. I do, but we are always looking for people who are in some way like us, our gender, our race, our nationality, our ideas, our personality, whatever. History is foreign to us all, and when we look into history, we're looking for something familiar to hold on to. If you only speak English-speaking American ease,
it's confusing,
and you get sent back to the 1500s, would you be more comfortable if you arrived in a place like England or China? Probably England, right? You probably know a lot more about English history than Chinese history. Likewise, when we study history, we're looking for people and places and ideas we can understand and relate to. We're looking for points of connection in the past. And so that's why it's important for historians to tell the stories of a variety of people. It's all part of gaining that working knowledge of Adventist history that we're after. Fifth, we need to include women's stories because they are just so good. Seriously, we've been missing out on some fantastic stories of love and sacrifice and courage and faithfulness to Christ. Why would we not want more of that? Finally, a historian asked me recently why I got into Adventist history, because I'm a bit of an odd duck.
I'm a duck now.
And I told him it was to figure out why we are the way that we are. And I don't think we can really understand why the Adventist church is the way that it is without telling the stories of Adventist women. Women have always made up a majority of our members. Just go look at your local church. But they've always been a minority in our histories, and we've got to fix that. We just have to fix that. So those are some reasons why we need to add women's stories to our Adventist history. It's a way of correcting the bias of a previous generation. It's a way of doing justice to the women who gave their lives to this cause, and then were subsequently forgotten. And because we will never fully understand our own Adventist history without the women who have always made up the majority of our members. I hope that makes sense. If not, if you have any questions, leave some comments below and I'll do my best to address them. We're almost done now with Season 2 of the Adventist History Podcast, and then I'll be working on revising Season 1. I've always told you that this is just my first draft. It will, Lord willing, only get better over time, and I thank you so much for listening.